Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Maple Leafs Lounge. I'm your host, Kevin Armstrong, joined as always by my good friends, Petr Baracchini and Alex Hobson. The three of us make up part of the team that covers everybody's favorite team to love and hate, the Toronto Maple Leafs, and we do that for the hockey writers. Make sure to follow us on all your social media platforms. thehockeywriters.com is where you can find us as well. And after not a whole lot to talk about for a couple of months, things have gone crazy for the last few weeks. And that speculation that we were able to get a lot of ink on for a few months and just throw out random player names, there's finally some players that are coming. This has been a difficult week for the Toronto Maple Leafs, as it's been a difficult week for a lot of teams, because this is when you kind of realize you're cheering for the jersey and not the player as much, because as much as those players say, I love this team, I love these guys, they're going where the money's going. So we had to say goodbye to Zach Hyman. We had to say goodbye to Frederik Andersen. And there's a few other guys that don't look like they're returning from last year's roster as well. But let's talk about who is coming in. New face. So we'll start with the most recent signing for us, and that is Nick Ritchie. How about Alex? You take it from there with telling us all about the newest addition.
Yeah, personally, I'm a big fan of this signing of Nick Ritchie. I know if you followed the 2014 draft affectionately like I did, and I'm sure Peter did at least, everybody
man.
And Kevin. Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, geez. I just put my foot in the wrong door. There you go, Kevin. My man. Okay. Anyways, yeah, I was a big fan of this signing of Nick Ritchie. If you look back at the 2014 draft, everybody and their mother wanted the Leafs to take Nick Ritchie, and kind of surprised the world when the Leafs went, I wouldn't say off the board, but they went against what they've kind of been accustomed to doing over the past couple of seasons. And they went with the small skilled player rather, in Swedish William Nylander instead of the big, strong, tough Canadian boy in Nick Ritchie. But 15 goals last year, which over the pace of an 82 game season would get up to about 25 goals. He had 26 points last year, I believe. And I really, really like his combination of size and goal scoring ability. I think he'd fit in really well in the top six down the stretch. He also played a lot with Ondrej Kase, who is another name that we'll touch on later on in the show, when he was in Boston and in Anaheim with them. And I'm a big fan of the signing all around. I think he's got potential to kind of, in a sense, replace what Zach Hyman did for the Leafs last year. And I'm excited to see where he fits into the lineup and how he develops with the team.
Yeah, and we'll talk about some line combinations a little bit later in the show. Now, this is a 2-year, $5 million deal. So some of the most spending that we saw Kyle Dubas do in the last couple of days was for this player. Peter, is he worth it?
Given how much he's making per year, it's at 2.5, 2 seasons. Given the amount of cap space that they had, I think it does work, even with some of the other contracts that were handed out at the beginning of free agency. They had $9.3 million left to work with heading in. Instead of going after a big name like a Brandon Saad, forking over about $5 or $4.5 million, I believe is what he got. Forking over $7 million for Gabriel Landeskog. It was wise to spend it in many different areas. So you got the goaltending, you got your depth up front, which was going to be the main holes. And granted, you didn't land a top six name, but as Alex said, Nick Ritchie could possibly be that name to be in that top six. Now, he doesn't have the high-end goal scoring abilities like a Brandon Saad or a Gabriel Landeskog, but if he's able to develop and play as well as he did in Boston over here, I think it could really work out, given the fact that, he can go in, set up a forecheck, be a strong net front presence, a really good shot on the power play. He could do a lot of great things. And again, given the fact that he was in a middle six spot, this is his chance to try and earn more of a chance and say, hey, I'm going to be worth more than just what I was in the past right now.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a big point there with he's not the scoring, but that's the one thing that Dubas didn't have on his checklist. There was supposed to be already a lot of scoring on that roster. There's just 4 players over $40 million that are supposed to do the scoring. So they needed character guys this time around. And Ritchie seems to be one of those guys, and happy to be home by all means as well. So interesting signing. And it'll be interesting if he gets into the top 6 as well. We'll talk about that later on. Over to the netminder situation. Now, essentially a trade has taken place between the Carolina Hurricanes and the Toronto Maple Leafs. They just did it in free agency instead, as Frederik Andersen is now with Carolina, and we welcome into the fold Petr Mrazek to Toronto. I really liked listening to the interview with Mrazek. He sounded really excited about it, and I guess maybe his years playing for the Ottawa 67s, he would have seen the rivalry and kind of known what the Leafs were all about. And he seems like he's really, really excited to play for this team, which is always great to see. So, Peter, do his numbers, should we be excited for this guy just as much as he's excited to be in Toronto?
I think he should always be excited, given the fact that, you know, we needed someone capable of helping out Jack Campbell if in case, you know, he doesn't have the numbers that he had last season, or if he does go down with an injury, because Mrazek does have, you know, some pretty good numbers. Granted, he only played in 12 games last year. He had surgery on his thumb. Missed quite a bit of significant time with that. But in 12 games, he had a 2.06 goals against average and a 923 save percentage. And, you know, he's struggled in the past, like trying to set his mark as a potential starter in Detroit. He got traded or got dealt to Philadelphia, signed with the Carolina Hurricanes. And in the past 3 seasons, he's done fairly well. So I think the fact that, you know, he's done his part there. He knows his worth. He's going to come in. They're going to share the load. I would hope that it's going to be a really good split down the middle to try and make sure everyone is, you know, getting their fair share, but also helping each other out in that regard. And, you know, again, it all comes down to the money as well. 3.8 for Petr Mrazek, who had better numbers. And even I believe his underlying numbers are better than Frederik Andersen than what it was last season as well. So to get 3.8 for Petr Mrazek over 3 years, then Frederik Andersen at 4.5 for another 2. To me, I think that's a better win, and you're probably going to get, you know, what you're going to get more with Petr Mrazek, because he's going to be very steady in net.
Now, don't adjust your TV, but I think after Alex said that I may have not been interested in the draft, I actually kicked him out. So sorry about that. It's on there now. He might be joining us a little bit later on. But I'm going to say to you, Peter, on this one, a few things that stick in my mind is that, firstly, sorry, Carolina, you go from a pretty awesome crease with some great goaltenders, give a guy away to the Red Wings and let the other guy walk, and you bring in a guy that's coming off an injury-plagued season and is worst in his career.
Really sorry about that happened.
Yeah, sorry about that, Carolina. Not sure, but the strange thing about this is that Jack Campbell is your starter and he's making 1.6, and the apparent backup that's going to be there for a couple of years is making more than double that. That's always seems, you know, we don't talk about the money in the locker room, but that still has to be in your head at some point to me, that the backup. So Jack is going to be, if he's remotely okay this season, he's going to be in line for a big payday when you're paying the backup 3.8. That's the first problem I see with that deal. And the second one I see is this kind of goes back to 2012, 2013, 2014 era when it was Reimer and Bernier. You had two pretty good goalies, you know, above average goalies, but you didn't have that guy that could save the game at any given time for you, like that elite guy. And I always thought when it was Reimer and Bernier, I always thought trade those two for one elite guy would be great. Yeah. But that's obviously hard to do. And that's kind of what I see in this. It's kind of two above average goaltenders that are going to have to rely on team defense in front of them a lot.
Yeah, and that's a fair observation, given the fact that both of them are not an Andre Vasilevsky. They're not a Marc-Andre Fleury. They're not I'm going to even throw in Connor Hellebuck. They're not elite level goaltenders. But given the fact that the team made good strides defensively in front of Campbell and in front of Andersen, despite Andersen letting in quite a few easy goals last season, I think they have that to work, or that's kind of working in their favor right now, given the fact that, you know, they have pieces in place. Great shot blockers and great transitional players to move the puck out when they need to. It's gonna indeed help the alleviate some of the pressure off of both Mrazek and Campbell right now. But I do agree that, two right now above average goaltending. But I think right now, if it shows anything, maybe that is a good thing for them. Maybe they could get a feel of each other and then, build off of momentum. If Mrazek has a good couple games, Campbell could come in and vice versa. So you have that going for you right now.
All right. Now, Alex has rejoined the conversation because he had to run out and see what the deal was with David Kampf.
Yes.
Right, Alex?
Exactly. Yes. Right? I was actually just at a gym in Chicago watching David Kampf's workout, and I've piled together some notes.
Good. So, yes, as you say, in Chicago. So, former Blackhawk has also joined the Blue and White. So, Alex, since you're fresh back, why don't you tell us all about this guy?
Yeah. So, I don't know if you guys see on Twitter these JFresh hockey charts that come out every time a new player is signed or traded for, or whatever. They do a big chart outlining these players' analytical games and their expected goals and everything. And when people originally saw David Kampf's chart, everything looked negative. What it looked like is he was a good defensive player with bad analytics and he didn't score. So a lot of people weren't too thrilled about the signing. But then Jack Hahn, who worked as an assistant coach at the Toronto Marlies a couple years ago, wrote a little bit of an article just outlining why the Blackhawks loved David Kampf loved him so much, and why Kyle Dubas maybe was so interested in him, because apparently the Leafs were interested in Kampf going back almost to last year. So from my knowledge, he's essentially he's a left-handed Riley Nash, so doesn't bring too much offense, but he's a great penalty killer, and he's great on the forecheck, great on the back check, and he's great at faceoffs. And to my knowledge, David Kampf was played quite a bit last year in Chicago with, I believe it was Dominic Kubalik and Pius Suter, one of those two. And he was essentially, his job was to make space for the other players, put pressure on the opposing defenders when they'd be trying to get the puck out, and essentially keep the rest of the defenders on the other team away from whoever had the puck on his team. And in that sense, I think Leaf fans are really going to enjoy David Kampf. I think he's going to be one of those guys that sort of Kyle Dubas was talking about bringing a new element into the bottom six, and I think Kampf's game perfectly complements that, because obviously the Leafs want to be tougher to play against as a team, and I think Kampf is a great step in the right direction for that. If you play him in a bottom six role, be it the third line or the fourth line, I think we're going to see a lot less pucks being shot on the Leafs when David Kampf's on the ice. So as fans, I don't think there's much more we can ask for than that.
That sounds like the playoffs player that Toronto desperately needed and will need this year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to not look backwards as much. We gotta move forward here. But Peter, anything else you want to add to this recent addition?
Yeah, no, just looking back at even some of the clips too, like obviously, like Alex mentioned, you're not going to get a lot of offense out of him, but he's very positionally sound. He knows where to be. He knows how to tie up his assignments. And even if he does get the puck as a quick chip out, or he's finding his teammates who have that puck moving ability, because he may not have that knack compared to let's say a Michael Bunting or whatever, and whoever he's going to be playing with, he's going to have some offensive tools at his disposal to move the play up, and then he could jump in and join the rush as a trailer. So the fact that he has a smarts and a vision positionally, I think it's going to be very well, or bode very well for the Maple Leafs.
This is the Maple Leafs Lounge, brought to you by the Hockey Writers. You can find us on all your favorite social media platforms. Make sure to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. We got over the 1,000 mark. Thank you very much for that. And this channel is growing daily. And thank you for contributing to its recent success. Now, Kyle Dubas, as we know, spent some time with the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds, and Mr. Ritchie was also a Sioux Greyhound, but another guy that he actually drafted, Kyle Dubas drafted, has joined the fold in Michael Bunting. And really cool story behind this guy. But you're talking about another Kyle Dubas, knew him when he was 20, that was 2013, so 8 years ago. And he was also teammates with Mitch Marner back in AA at one point too. So lots of ties to Leafland. But this is kind of one of those diamond in the rough, that this could be one of those finds that pays dividends at 950. So, Peter, tell us more about Michael Bunting and why this is such a imperative and pretty sneaky find for Kyle Dubas.
Yeah, the talks about trying to get Michael Bunting have been going back the connection between the two has been around for quite some time. They were always like linking him to him and the Maple Leafs well before the offseason even started. So the fact that, he's a late bloomer, had really good numbers in the AHL, comes up, plays 21 games, and he scores 10 goals for the Arizona Coyotes this season. After scoring 19 points in 16 games with Tucson in the AHL. So very consistent production at the AHL, getting his opportunity at the NHL level. I'm not sure if he was willing to sign in Arizona, but we know how much of a situation they were going with all their contracts and big name players like Connor Garland and everything like that. But the fact that they were able to get him, I think it was a really great find. They need more depth scoring. That was the big thing heading in, which is why they got Ritchie, they got Kasha, they got Kampf as well. But he brings a lot of what Zach Hyman does. And I know Alex mentioned that Ritchie's going to bring what Hyman lost. I think Bunting is going to do the same thing. It's going to come down to them to fill that void in the top six and fill what Hyman lost, because both of them, and especially Bunting as well, does a great job of getting under the opposition's skin, getting in deep in the forecheck, being a very just tenacious attitude, or being a very tenacious player every single time they're on the ice. So really great pickup, cheap contract for the next 2 years. I believe it is at $950,000 for 2 years. So 2 years for him to try and prove his worth. Very great contract given their cap situation. And if he does really well and he breaks out, wouldn't surprise me to see at some point they're going to extend him, because he fits the bill of what Zach Hyman had.
At a way cheaper price. As we mentioned, we did have to say goodbye to Zach Hyman. He got a payday going to the Edmonton Oilers on a pretty lucrative 7-year deal for him. So congrats, Zach, and we'll see you later, but we don't like you anymore. You're no longer in the blue and white, and it's time to replace you. Alex, is this the guy that could actually be the replacement for Zach?
Yep. So Peter pretty much hit every point that I would have mentioned on Michael Bunting. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read out 2 quotes that Kristen Shilton pulled from him in his press conference the other day. This doesn't count as my social media roundup, but they're definitely quotes worth bringing up. So the first one, he says, Michael Bunting on taking less money with the Leafs. I had multiple teams reach out to me. Some of the offers were higher than Toronto's, but the opportunity I had to come home and play for my team and compete for a Stanley Cup, that was definitely worth the pay cut in my mind. So there's quote number 1. And to allude to your point about Zach Hyman there, Kevin, here's the second quote. Michael Bunting on comparisons to Brad Marchand. Even in the GTHL days, I'd say I was a rat out there. But when I'm playing my best, I'm under the other team's skin and I'm just getting in their face. And that's just how I get involved. And I really enjoy that role. So paying attention to his press conference the other day when and following along with the reporters like Shilton and Mark Masters and David Alter, they were all getting some great quotes from him. And honestly, this might be a little bit of a hot take, but I could see him being sort of what the Panthers version, or sort of what our version of what the Panthers had with Carter Verhaeghe this year. I don't think he's going to be a point per game player, but I think if they start him off and say a third line role and kind of let him get into a groove and eventually move him up into the top 6, because he does play that Brad Marchand Hyman kind of game. You stick him alongside Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, or John Tavares and William Nylander. I think there's potential for 20, 25 goals this year and maybe even 50 points. Now, I'm not going to die on that hill. He could flop just as much as he could fly, but I see a lot of potential in him, and I love the deal that the Leafs brought him in on.
When you talk potential, here's the thing that I found interesting in reading about this guy is that when he was drafted into the OHL by Kyle Dubas, he was grabbed in the 9th round. That's when it's kind of just becoming a crapshoot, right? At that point, it's you may have seen this kid once or twice and you heard his name and that's who you're picking. You don't know if they're actually going to make the team. But then his development under Sheldon Keefe turned him into a 4th round pick in the NHL draft a couple of years after that. Sheldon Keefe is going to spend a lot of time with this guy, and I think that could really turn the corner for him and make him into a hockey player that is going to pay huge dividends for this team. So let's round up the rest. Now, there were gazillions of dollars spent when free agency opened. And money was flying. I don't even remember. I do have I think it was Chris Johnson with, I'll look it up. But anyway, tons of contracts were going out. And people are like, oh, the Leafs, they're not getting anybody. Blah, blah. The shopping was done. The shopping's already been done for this team. This team's supposed to be producing now. So I think when a lot of people go back on the free agency and they're like, John Tavares Day, well, that only happens once every 6 or 7 years. There's not as much money to bring in a Dougie Hamilton at 9.5. Holy crap, Devils. There's a lot of money going out for him. That blew out the expectations there. But anyway, the Leafs did pull the biggest surprise, and I thought it was crazy when we talked about it on this show a few weeks ago. They did get their guy in Gabriel.
Yeah.
Not Landeskog. Not Landeskog. It was a fast headline that I saw, and it took my breath away for a quick second. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's not Gabriel Landeskog. Okay, Curtis Gabriel. That's who I'm going to point out as the rest of the guys. He signed a 1-year deal, big time scrapper, and coming back into the Toronto area. He could be one that's fun to watch. I don't think he'll get a lot of ice time, but I think if they're in back-to-backs and things have gotten a little bit crazy, he'll be the guy that'll be going out onto the ice, and it's not going to all be on Wayne Simmons to be in that type of role. Because keep in mind, they're going to have to play a lot more physical teams in this upcoming season than what they did when they were in the North Division. Peter, who did you see in the other signings that you liked?
I know we talked about, Nick Ritchie, but the other signing that really caught my eye was Ondrej Kase. Really struggled the past few seasons, and he's still with a lot of injuries. And it's such a shame because he has a lot of potential. He's a very strong two-way player, great on both sides of the puck, really great shot, broke out, I believe, in 2018-19, where he scored 20 goals and 38 points with the Ducks. Again, hasn't stayed healthy since, and I know the past few seasons with the Bruins, he's dealt with quite a series of concussions. So, to me, this signing was a really, really low-risk move, but, something that I think the Leafs wanted to make, given the fact that, again, depth is always going to be a big thing with this team right now. And granted that he could sneak into maybe a top 6 role, I only see that as an injury situation, given the fact that he's a right wing, and the right wing in the top 6 is already occupied by Mitch Marner and William Nylander. So still the fact that he could be a really great presence in a bottom 6 role, or most likely a third line role. Hopefully he stays healthy, because if he's able to get to that point where he was able to get his quick shot off, maybe score, maybe not 20 goals, but if he's able to get to 15, maybe 20, that's going to be a really great pickup for them. It's a low risk move. Nothing, not a whole lot of pressure on Kase coming in, prove his worth, just to make sure that, teams value him, because he is a very highly sought after player, and the analytics community loves him, given the fact that he could drive possession both offensively and defensively. So I think this was a really great pickup.
Alex, wrap it up with one more player for us.
Yeah, so another guy that caught my eye, and this wasn't an official contract, but it has potential to result in a contract, was the signing to a PTO of Josh Ho-Sang. Mm-hmm. And Ho-Sang is a guy that I've been a big fan of for a while now. I remember thinking when he was drafted, I believe it was 28th overall by the Islanders in 2014. I remember thinking he had the skill to be drafted higher, and maybe even in the top 15, top 20, but he fell to 28th overall, never really got it going with the Islanders. I think personally, if he does impress enough to get a contract, I think he could become a pretty sneakily good contributor for the Leafs. And obviously that's a big if, because it's not like the other players who were signed today who immediately have a chance to come in and kind of get warmed up with line mates and all that. Like, Ho-Sang's actually got to come in and try out for a job, and then the Leafs decide if he's worthy of a contract. And if he is, then he's got to start working for a spot in the lineup. And the Leafs have an abundance of forwards right now, but Josh Ho-Sang, if I recall correctly, he's done pretty well offensively in every look of NHL games he got with the Islanders. Hasn't been in the NHL for a while. This is sort of his return, and the Leafs are the first team to give him a second chance after the Islanders did. So I think if he really shows up with a mindset that he wants to go, and kind of reestablish himself as a player in the NHL, I think there's potential for him to do something in Toronto.
And they seem to have the training staff and the support staff that have turned some players around. As we know, with Alex's favorite guy, the Alex Galchenyuks of the world, was really turned around. And then look what he did. He's looking for his 12th NHL franchise. Thanks a lot. But Ho-Sang, you know what when his name came up, all I always think about is the fact that he wore 66 when he started in the NHL. I know it was for his hero Lemieux and the number's not retired and everything else, but man, that kind of put a target on you pretty fast when you wear 66. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. And that could be one of the big comeback stories for sure for the Maple Leafs. And it always seems that they're going to have that type of storyline developing around the team. So this is kind of a wrap on what the free agency can do. If you look at the salary cap right now, the Leafs are actually over. So lucky they've got some salary cap people that can figure that. But obviously the shopping is done. Unless a trade is coming and then some more shopping is going to happen after, but that doesn't seem to be the case. It looks like they've got enough players to actually ice a hockey team now. And maybe that hockey team won't just be 4 players. It looks like there's a few players that could round it out quite nicely. So let's grade Kyle Dubas on the job during free agency week. And before I get to that, I'm going to say that it was this quote that I saw. It was actually from our good buddy Joe Bowen. I love his voice calling Leaf games. But after the first day of free agency, he tweeted out, $500 million spent today on free agents, and the track record for over the years in this is the most costly and destructive day for GMs and franchises alike. So Toronto didn't really play in that sandbox on that very expensive day. So just for that fact, I'm happy with it, because the last thing we needed was that Landeskog contract that was being talked about and all those different things, and one more really high paid player that would just handcuff this team even further. It wasn't in the cards. And I'm glad that did not happen. I'm glad the money was more spent on finding a bunch of different players. And so for that fact, I would say he did an okay job. How about you, Alex? How did Kyle Dubas do?
So I'll probably give Kyle Dubas a B+. And I give him a B+ because as much as I really like most of the signings that Dubas made in free agency this year, I also think that there's a lot of uncertainty. They didn't really go out and get any guys who are going to make an impact and be in the lineup all year. I think Nick Ritchie and Andre Kasha and Michael Bunting, all those guys, Petr Mrazek, I think they've all got a great chance to do good things in Toronto. But it's not like, if they were to go out and get a Gabe Landeskog, and you know what you're getting in him, right? So there is a lot of uncertainty, but he was very cost efficient on free agency this year. And Dubas has always been great at finding value in low cost and low risk players. And I think this year was just another splitting example of that. And I hear a lot of people saying that this was a bad off season for Dubas because he didn't go out and get a guy, a surefire top 6 winger to replace Hyman, like a Landeskog or a Saad. And what I will say to that is, you can't tell me that this Leafs team, with the core 4 up front that they have and an untouched defensive core from last year that was pretty good, and an improved, in my mind, goaltending tandem between Jack Campbell and Petr Mrazek, you cannot tell me that that team cannot hold a candle to any of the other Atlantic Division teams. And the reality is, I know that after watching that first round exit, all we want as Leaf fans is change, something to happen, because it left a sour taste in all of our mouths. But what I've learned between this year and last year is that going out and getting the most attractive names and going out and spending all your money on a big fish does not make the team succeed in the playoffs. We all thought that the roster heading into 2020, 2021 was a dream roster. It was their year to go for the cup. And look what happened. They lost in the first round. So I think the Leafs core and the Leafs defense and their goaltending as it stands is good enough to compete with the rest of the Atlantic teams. And I think they found a lot of good value, some potential good value in some low risk players. I don't think going out and getting a Landeskog or a Saad would help them over the hump any more than the guys that he signed this year will. So I think he did a good job. And I think there's a lot of untapped potential there, and a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot of risk, but there's a lot of uncertainty. And I'm excited to see how it all plays out. Wow.
He gives out tough marks, a B+, and then all the good stuff. So Peter, how about you? Are you any nicer with the grades?
I'm going to go average and give a B, and then not to say that I'm copying Alex's answers like I would in school, but I'm going to copy most of Alex's answers because he gave a really good detailed analysis of Dubas's offseason. And yeah, the fact that they were able to get out a lot of really great depth names that have a lot of potential and really great upside for the future or for the next few years or so, I think it was a really great job. Like you said, I would have loved to have a Brandon Saad, and maybe at 4.5, maybe that could have worked out, but maybe it's just too rich for the Maple Leafs given what can happen down the line for the next 4 or 5 years with his contract. The fact that they went short year, I think it gives them more time to evaluate what prospects they have in their system, who could come up. I guarantee that maybe at some point we're going to see Nick Robertson, whether he starts up with the Maple Leafs or starting the AHL and then get called up. Same thing with Timothy Liljegren. I think these guys have been deserving of roster spots. So he's going short term, low money right now, but he's also thinking about the future and whether he has players that could immediately come in and take over those spots when players' contracts are up as well.
Yeah, and I think the hard part when we're talking about this is we can give the average grades because it wasn't a big off season. And so maybe if you were to look at the overall thing, that would change it. But for this quarter, that's all you could really pull off because you just didn't have the budget left to do anything really. But at least it does look like a pretty interesting roster to watch and see how it comes together and what Sheldon Keefe can do with it now. So things are starting to come together. They'll be back on the ice soon, and then we'll be able to talk some hockey even more than during these summer months. So we're going to keep it tight because we're running out of time here, but let's just do a quick thought on the lineup now. And we'll do our 4 forwards and see where things land after that. But I'm thinking that, so since I've got the mic right now, I get to go first. That's how it works. So I'm going to throw Ritchie on the top line right away. I'm going to give that a whirl and see what happens. A lot like how we saw Joe Thornton on the top line last year. I think that's worth a try. You put that big frame out there in front and see where things can go from there, I think is what we'll see. I also think that Ilya Mikheyev might break into that top 6 now. I think that'd be a fun line to watch. Tavares and Nylander and Mikheyev there. That'd be a fast line that would be giving fits and keeping the defense on its heels. And after that, guys, I really don't know where I'm placing the next 12 players. There's so many unknowns on that right now with what kind of player it would be. I'm obviously Kerfoot's going to be centering the third line at this point. Maybe he breaks into the top 6 on a wing at some point as well if Mikheyev doesn't work out, because he did have an awesome playoffs. But after that, I don't know. I'm leaving the bottom 3 and 4. I'm leaving that one to Sheldon Keefe to figure out. So I'll bail on that one. But Alex, what do you think of my top 2 lines? And do you have any ideas for the bottom 3 and 4 line?
Yes. So my first line is actually the same as yours. I'm thinking start Ritchie out on that top line. I think his physical presence and the fact that he plays a big power forward sort of game, he can get to the net and bank and rebounds. I think while he doesn't play exactly like Zach Hyman, I think he could do a great job of sort of filling that role on that line. This is a little bit of a hot take, I think. I tweeted this out and I had a couple of people disagreeing with me on it, which is fine. That's the beauty of social media and throwing out your old lineup ideas. I think we're going to see Nick Robertson in the top 6 this year. And the reason I say that is because the Leafs didn't go out and get, like we already said, they didn't go out and get a Landeskog or a Brandon Saad. So all these other guys they picked up, like Bunting and Ritchie and Kasha and Kampf, while some of them do have potential to be in a top 6 role, all of them are safe options in the bottom 6. And I think Nick Robertson, if he has a good training camp and impresses the team, I think they'll give him a trial in the top 6 to see how he does. And based on his style of game. Now, I don't know. I'm not going to hold him to that, but I do think it's a possibility. And now moving on to the bottom 6, I would probably go Michael Bunting, Alex Kerfoot, and Andre Kasha on the 3rd line. And then I'm thinking for the 4th line, we'll probably see something along the lines of Ilya Mikheyev, David Kampf, and Jason Spezza. And I think we'll see Wayne Simmons and Pierre Engvall kind of rotate out with those guys, provided none of them get traded.
Peter, weigh in on this one.
Yeah, so my first line is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to have Michael Bunting alongside Matthews and Marner, given the fact that he does have the speed to try and keep up with both of them. Although we saw Nick Foligno, he was a bigger guy, keep up with Matthews and Marner. Nick Ritchie could probably do the same thing. I do see him as a bit, and I got a lot of heat for this online saying that, Nick Ritchie's younger and slightly quicker version of Nick Foligno. And they're all jumping at me saying, oh, you think Nick Ritchie's quick? And that's not what I was getting at. I was comparing him to Nick Foligno. But that would be my top line, given the fact that Bunting has the speed to keep up, the energy, the presence to be a bit of an agitator as well. Same thing with Nick Ritchie, but the speed is playing a bit of a factor for me with that top line. Second line, I'm surprised you didn't go with this, Alex, for the memes. Nick Ritchie, John Tavares, and William Nylander, mainly because of that, just for the memes. My third line, I'm going to have David Kampf as the center, Alex Kerfoot on the wing, and Andre Kasha as the right wing. I'm going to stick to the fact that he's going to stay on the right-hand side. And given the fact that, Kerfoot excelled on the wing position, I think he's going to do a really great job as well. But he has played well at center. So if you want to rotate him at the center position, that's fine by me. And my fourth line, I'm going to have Ilya Mikheyev, Adam Brooks, and Jason Spezza. Adam Brooks, to me, was too good last season in that fourth line role. I think playing alongside Joe Thornton and even Jason Spezza helped him out. The fact that he still has Spezza at his disposal is going to help him out tremendously, along with in his development as well. And Ilya Mikheyev, I hate to drop him because of the fact that he does have such great speed, but his offensive production is a big question mark. It just doesn't seem to be a major fit in that middle six role. So he dropped down for me. And Simmons, Gabriel, and Pierre Engvall are going to be battling it out. I mean, you forked over money to keep Wayne Simmons in the fold. Pierre Engvall up in and out of the lineup quite a bit, and Curtis Gabriel is just going to be in there to, play a physical game and throw a few punches whenever he needs to. But I think that's going to be my depth right there.
So we're going to wrap up the show there then with just our social media wrap as well. Because as Alex said, there are some great things about social media, and we try to highlight those during our show. And this one is a bit of a roast, but the nice side is, we should say on the show, congratulations to Mitch Marner, who got engaged this week. But I did see somebody say, I hope the wedding's not in spring because he won't show up.
Ooh, I hate to be that guy right now.
We just lost any chance of having Mitch Marner on this show right there.
At least that wasn't one of us who said that.
Yeah, no.
We're just relaying the message.
Yeah, just pass along the message. But I will say one of my favorite ones, and our podcast listeners can't see it, but I'm going to show it, and hopefully you guys can see it. But Donovan Bailey, with the Olympics going on, Donovan Bailey wearing a Maple Leafs jersey and has the number 9.84 on the back. Man, that brought back memories of Matt. I'm getting goosebumps right now just thinking of watching Donovan Bailey win that gold for Canada. And, anyway, as the Olympics are going on with no crowd, it's weird, but can't wait for that to get back to normal and we can start cheering on our Canadian athletes. We can from a long way away, but it still just doesn't feel the same right now. Who wants to go next with social media wrap?
I'll go.
Peter, if you've got something, you can go.
I got something. So I love movies. I love the classics. Willy Wonka, The Chocolate Factory is one of my favorite ones. I'm a kid at heart, so deal with it. This was from an account called @SLucas_, and she wrote, Leafs Twitter and that boat scene from Willy Wonka and The Chocolate Factory have similar energy. And given from what we saw with all the comments about free agency and the players that they went after, yeah, it was just like that riverboat scene, really hectic. And, you know, you have Gene Wild there just being really creepy with his monologue and speech with all the like creepy stuff in the background. So, yeah, a lot of things were happening there. A lot of things are happening in Leafs Nation. A lot of people don't like it, but then some do like it, just like Charlie Bucket. So, yeah.
I am so lost right now. Alex, help me out here. What do you got from social media?
All right. So as I touched on before, there were some people who were originally criticizing the Leafs' decision to take William Nylander over Nick Ritchie. And perhaps the most vocal critic of that decision right there was Don Cherry. So one of my favorite follows on Twitter at SammyT_51, Sammy Turpak, tweeted this picture. And the caption is, when the Leafs finally get Nick Ritchie, but he plays on a line with William Nylander. And I don't know if you can read that, but it's a picture of Don Cherry. And the caption is, I've won, but at what cost?
Oh, that's a name we haven't heard for a while. Don Cherry.
Oh, is it ever? Mm.
And we'll leave it there because we'll just leave it there. It's been a fun week. You know, we talked about last week that the NFL training camps have started. That means we know that the NHL training camps are next up. And after this week and the amount of unknowns that are out there, this training camp is going to be really fun to watch and cover and bring to you on the Hockey Writers. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode. We hope you enjoyed. Please leave your comments below or go on social media and follow the Maple Leafs Lounge Twitter handle. And I don't have it off the top of my head, so you're just going to have to research. Come on, you can do it. And tell us what you want us to talk about on the show. We're always open for more opinions and comments and lots of different subjects to talk about. So thanks so much for being part of the Hockey Writers audience, and we will see you next week.